By former U.S. Attorney Brett Tolman. He's the executive director of Right on Crime. Jenna, Brett, great to have you both with us today.
Great to see you, John.
Thanks, John.
All right, so let's start with this, a family emergency for Bill Stepien, but we want to focus on the Democrats and this plan that they have in place, a 7-point plan, I think it is. Congresswoman Elaine Loria told NBC's Meet the Press yesterday, and this is what she said. Take a listen.
I think it's going to become clear across the compilation of these hearings is that, this 7-part plan we're going to lay out was every lever of government. They were attempting to use those, and, whichever one they could pull and would have some influence, they move forward with it.
All right, so the January 6th committee, Jenna, claims that Donald Trump was orchestrating this massive conspiracy to overturn the election to remain in power. They also claim that they have enough evidence to indict Donald Trump. But we've heard this before during impeachment 1 and impeachment 2. What we've heard so far from these first 2 days, how do you think their case is going so far, Jenna?
Well, it's just continuing to be their orchestrated theater and basically a taxpayer-funded Democratic commercial, because they don't have anything to run on in November other than this very lame narrative. And so, like what we've seen with the Mueller investigation, that they beat that horse until they had really, really bad hearings. And when Mueller testified on that day, they knew it was completely done. And so now they've hired this former ABC producer to make this more Hollywood style. I don't think that's having any effect. The ratings were terrible. People are more concerned about inflation. They're more concerned about Joe Biden's relationship with China. They're more concerned about the Second Amendment. They're more concerned about the abortion decision that we're still awaiting from Dobbs. They're more concerned about things that the American people should be focused on than the fact that President Trump told his supporters on January 6th to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard. That's the clip that you haven't seen played in the committee, and I wonder why, because that negates their entire narrative.
It does, and Brett, as any prosecutor will tell you, or defense attorney, you have to present the entirety. You have to put these things in context, and they're not doing that here. And it's so obvious, and I'm also trying to figure out, other than the video and the way it's being produced, what is actually new so far that we've heard from this committee?
John, I knew I was in trouble in trial when I brought cases if my only evidence I could give the jury was my statement that the defendant was guilty. If I said that over and over again, it meant that I really had no evidence to point to, and I was there with a weak case and concerned about a verdict. What you have right now is the same sort of rationale. You have the January 6th committee, the commission. Each individual is asserting very emphatically that Donald Trump was behind all of this and that he's guilty. And what we don't have is any additional evidence, any statements, any behind the scenes dialogue and discussion that proved that there was some plan by Donald Trump to do something that was illegal at the time. And we should be concerned that this is more theater, and each day seems to appear to be more and more theater.
We saw quite a few people tune in actually on Thursday night, but they had the benefit of prime time. You just wonder how much, and I think a lot of that was just curiosity from folks like us who wanted to see how this was going to go down. And I don't think that audience retains throughout this entire process, but we'll see. We'll come back to that, I'm sure, but I also want to focus on the gun control deal that's been reached in the Senate. The Washington Post and others say it contains, quote, modest gun restrictions. There's a federal grant program for state-based red flag laws. It expands criminal background checks on gun buyers younger than 21. It would also prevent gun sales to a broader group of domestic violent offenders. You guys probably heard this referred to as the boyfriend loophole. There's also money for school safety here. But Jenna, the left says this does not go far enough. The right says it puts the Second and potentially the Fourth Amendment in jeopardy when you talk about those red flag laws. How do you see it?
Yeah, what the left is calling, a moderate proposal, anyone who is rational and concerned about our God-given rights would call blatantly unconstitutional. I have never seen a red flag law that would be constitutional, because we never in this country have what's called pre-crime. We don't go in and say, well, just because you may at some point possibly potentially commit a crime, we're going to punish you and we're going to take away some of your rights and liberties on that possibility. And so while there are certain factors that we can see after the fact, we always say that in criminal law that people have to commit an overt act or an act in furtherance of commission that's attempted, and we always have to make sure that there is that overt act in commission before we punish people. So all of this is an emotional reaction, but all of this is designed to put conservatives on the defense so that we are trying to protect our Second Amendment, we're trying to protect our Fourth Amendment, instead of going after the Democrats and being advocates and on the offensive, saying that Joe Biden has been an utter failure. So conservatives need to keep their eye on the ball and not just always play defense.
Brett, what's your initial take on this proposal?
You know, in the U.S. Code, there's a section called 922G. It has all the ability you need in order to enforce gun laws that would serve to prevent individuals that have mental health issues, domestic violence, criminal past, including misdemeanors. What I've been advocating for a long time is enforcement of our existing laws instead of the emotional charged, rush to add additional laws. And John, think about this. Under Ronald Reagan, we had about 1,000 criminal statutes. We now have over 300,000 criminal statutes and regulations with criminal penalties. Congress does this every time there's an emotional incident, and we're the ones who have to suffer because it's our rights that get pulled away every time that they go and legislate.
When you talk about that, Brett, I specifically think about what happened in Charleston and how the shooter there slipped through the cracks. Also in Parkland, there were dozens of interactions between police and the shooter there, which could have prevented that attack. But, March for Our Lives, it was back in the news this weekend. They had a big rally in Washington, D.C. Of course, this is the group that was formed after the Parkland shooting. And David Hogg, which is one of the shooting survivors, he tweeted this about this deal we were just speaking of. When senators reach a bipartisan deal on guns for the first time in 30 years, it's time to celebrate with the breakfast of champions. I guess that's a chocolate milkshake for him. But here's something else he told the crowd over the weekend. Quote, "Let's stop using mental health as a scapegoat from confronting white supremacy in our country." So basically, according to the left, if you're a Second Amendment supporter, Jenna, you're a racist. And, he wasn't the only one to throw around the term white supremacy and kind of bury it in their speeches. I thought the goal of this was to prevent all these mass shootings, not just the ones committed by white supremacists.
Right. Well, and this is exactly why red flag laws are so dangerous, because then if you are in any way a conservative or a white person or an old white male or anyone that they want to paint as someone who could possibly be a threat, then suddenly that's a red flag. So this is exactly the type of slippery slope that the left is saying, oh, let's now forget about the potential warning signs, not just red flags and not in the sense and context of pre-crime, but let's ignore things that can actually be effective in terms of getting people help before they commit these types of crimes. Let's just go after the conservatives. And that's exactly why red flag laws are so dangerous. But we see this from the left. It's all emotionally charged. It's all about their preferred outcomes, and it's all about partisan politics. They don't care about anything other than control.
Brett, something else the left doesn't seem to want to talk about is the assassination attempt on Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. The Sunday shows on ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN all ignored this story. Are you surprised?
I'm frustrated and upset that we see the double standard again. I'm not surprised given what's going on. If the attempt or the evidence came out that it was against one of the justices appointed by President Obama, we would see a different result, and we'd see media emphasizing the need to protect the justices. We have laws that are there to protect them. They should be enforced, but this was a blatantly planned attempt to go after a sitting justice on the Supreme Court. Why isn't that the most important story in the country?
Yeah, the New York Times buried it. The Sunday shows didn't want to talk about it. Real quickly, wanted to get a reaction from both of you. Harvard Law professor emeritus Alan Dershowitz was on Newsmax over the weekend. And Jenna, he actually said that he believes prosecutors have overcharged in this case. Take a look.
He cannot be convicted of attempted murder. He didn't go far enough. This is what's called preparation.
Yeah.
For it to be attempted murder, he has to come a lot closer to actually having killed than just surveilling a house. He could be charged with other crimes, but he can't be successfully prosecuted for attempted murder.
I got about 20 seconds for each of you. Of course, Professor Dershowitz is a defense attorney, Jenna, but go ahead and I'll let Brett wrap up on this.
That may be true, and this wouldn't be the first time that we've seen prosecutors overcharge in order to get to a plea agreement faster. And so that may be, but all you need is a substantial step in furtherance of the crime. And so if the defense attorneys in this case decide to proceed to a preliminary hearing, that will then be litigated at that point.
All right, Brett, do you agree with Professor Dershowitz? Have they overcharged here in this case?
No, I don't agree, because it's the difference between the ivory tower and in the trenches. The prosecutor in the trenches, if he can convince a jury, then he'll win a prosecution on that.
All right, Brett Tolman, Jenna Ellis, great to talk to you both as always. We'll check back in with you and wait for that decision on Dobbs' case, because I want to hear from both of you on that as well. Stay tuned. We'll see you both.